Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
Nintendo and Sony are two of the biggest names in the gaming industry. You've probably heard of them, but did you know that they were once partners in the 1990s, working together to build a unique gaming experience that would revolutionize video games forever? However, as you'll see in this video, a dramatic turn of events led to a power struggle between the two titans. What happened behind the scenes that caused these two to break up? The taste of the future. Before this big project, the two had worked together previously on a groundbreaking sound chip for the Super Nintendo called the SPC 700. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System used a custom chip called the SPC 700 to process sounds. It was made by Sony and was made so that the games on the Super NES could have high quality audio and music. The SPC 700 could handle more complicated musical arrangements, processing of sounds in real time, and it was easy to program. Ken Kutaragi, a skilled engineer at Sony, was the brains behind this chip, which offered Nintendo's 16-bit system world-class audio that was virtually similar to CD quality. The chip was an important part of the Super NES's success, and it further helped make it one of the best game consoles of its time. The partnership that would change everything. Fast forward, when CDs became a way to store video games, it was an exciting chance for companies to take their gaming systems to the next level. Nintendo also showed interest in CD-ROM technology because they wanted to stay ahead of the competition and keep its lead in the gaming industry. Ken Kutaragi and Sony's previous work on the sound chip impressed Nintendo so much that they consulted with Sony for help in developing the next step for the Super NES. Realizing the potential of the CD-ROM technology, Nintendo formed a groundbreaking partnership with Sony, a company known for its expertise in making hardware and software products that use CD-ROM technology. The goal of the partnership was to make a CD-ROM add-on for the SNES called the PlayStation. The collaboration combined the best of both worlds, with Nintendo's dominance in the video game sector and Sony's mastery of the CD-ROM technology. The goal was to make a new gaming experience with graphics and storage that were much better than what the traditional cartridges could show. To compare, storage was based on cartridges that could hold a total of 48 megabytes of data. CDs, on the other hand, could hold a massive 700 megabytes. To put it in perspective, that's the same as 15 Super Nintendo games stacked on top of each other. This relationship, however, was destined to fail. The Philips Affair. Hiroshi Yamauchi, Nintendo's infamously power-hungry CEO at the time, cared only about the company's bottom line and had transformed Nintendo from a modest toy manufacturer into a global gaming powerhouse. The relationship between the two companies broke down because they didn't agree on who owned the software platform. Also, Nintendo was constantly terrified that Sony would leverage the partnership to get a strong position in the video game industry, which gave them cold feet. So, Nintendo went to Philips and started secret talks about making a completely different CD-ROM add-on for the SNES. At the time, Sony kept working on their PlayStation project. At the 1991 Consumer Electronics Show, things reached a turning point. Sony used their press conference to reveal the standalone SNES PlayStation system, a system that Sony intended to help them become a major player in the gaming sphere virtually overnight. The following day, Nintendo stepped all over Sony's toes by announcing to the crowd that it had signed a new arrangement with Philips to build a CD-ROM drive for the SNES. In an instant, Nintendo thought that they had put Sony in its place. This bold backstabbing was to show who really was in charge of the gaming space, but it would go horribly wrong for Nintendo later on. Sony's revenge. Sony had put a lot of money and time into the PlayStation project, so the sudden and dramatic turn of events was shocking. Nintendo's public shaming of the company was devastating. The partnership that was supposed to bring the video game industry to new heights had fallen apart before it even had a chance to take off. Contrary to what most people think, the 1991 CES show did not put an end to Sony and Nintendo's shaky partnership. Now that they didn't trust each other as much, the two companies kept trying to make a deal, and they eventually agreed that the SNES PlayStation could still happen. But by 1992, everything had fallen apart. There were rumors that Nintendo's continued negotiations were just a trick to keep Sony from entering the video game market. Frustrated by the slow progress, the partnership eventually fell apart. Nintendo's deal with Philips also fell through, so to get out of the deal, Nintendo let Philips use some of their IPs in games for the Philips CDI console. When Nintendo's deal with Philips was announced, Sony must have felt cheated by the backstabbing. Sony was stunned by the news because they had already invested so much in the PlayStation project and saw their partnership with Nintendo as a crucial part of their strategy for breaking into the video game industry. Norio Oga, the president of Sony, was furious. With Kutaragi's help, he decided to get even by starting Sony Computer Entertainment, a new division that would get Sony into the video game console market. And, according to Kutaragi, the PlayStation should no longer be built on the antiquated 16-bit processor, but rather a more powerful 32-bit processor with specialized hardware to enable real-time 3D graphics. Despite the setback, Sony decided to use the technology that it had made for the SNES add-on to build the first PlayStation, its own standalone machine. The result was a gaming console that combined the two most important breakthroughs in video game technology of the 1990s, CD storage and cutting-edge 3D graphics. The first PlayStation came out in 1994 in Japan and 1995 in North America. Its cutting-edge hardware, which included a CD-ROM drive with a lot more storage space than cartridges, made it an instant hit around the world. Before we continue, what do you think would have happened if the SNES PlayStation came to be? Let us know in the comments because we'd love to hear your thoughts. The impact of PlayStation. The PlayStation has had a big and lasting impact on the video game industry. The PlayStation release was a major turning point in the history of gaming because it made cartridge-based games less popular and helped make CD-ROMs the most popular way to develop games. Before the PlayStation, most video games were sold on cartridges, which had less space and cost more to make than CDs. The kinds of things that could be stored on cartridges were also limited, which made it hard for game designers to make games with complex graphics and sound effects. As a result, the potential for video games to be more immersive and engaging was limited. When the PlayStation used CD-ROM technology, it changed everything. CDs had a lot more storage space than cartridges, so game designers could make games that were bigger and more complicated. Because of this, the PlayStation became popular among gamers who liked how CDs made gaming more immersive and interesting. The PlayStation's impact on the gaming industry cannot be overstated. Sony's dominance in the gaming market is in part due to how popular the PlayStation was. It also set a lot of technological and visual standards that are still used today. The PlayStation's effect on the gaming industry led to a growth of video games as a multi-billion-dollar industry, and the acceptance of video games as a form of entertainment. Nintendo's painful realization. When Sony rose to prominence in the video game industry with the release of PlayStation, Nintendo was left to reflect on the missed opportunity that could have been. The once tight-knit partnership between the two companies had crumbled, and Nintendo was now faced with the daunting reality of having chosen to align itself with Philips instead. To put it bluntly, the Philips CDI games based on some of Nintendo's IPs were a disaster. The CDI games, which were released under the partnership, received widespread criticism for their subpar graphics, low-quality sound, and uninspired gameplay. Some of the most notable games that were widely considered to be failures include Hotel Mario, Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon. These games were so poorly received that they ended up damaging the reputation of both Nintendo and Philips in the gaming space, leaving a lasting impact on their reputations for years to come.
Hey, plumber boy, mustache man, your worst nightmare has arrived.
The company's decision to partner with Philips had not only cost them the chance to dominate the video game market, but it had also left them playing catch-up to the same company that they had once considered an ally. The release of the PlayStation was a bitter pill to swallow for Nintendo, and it marked the beginning of a new era in the video game industry.